Hello and welcome to There's No Business Like, a podcast where friends and industry colleagues explore topics and interview leaders in our industry of professional theatrical touring.
Welcome back to another episode of There's No Business Like. I'm Brian Zelmer from Bardavon Presents in Poughkeepsie, New York, and I'm here with my friends, Katie.
Hi, everyone. Katie Miller with Michigan Maven Creative Associates coming to you from Midland, Michigan.
And Josh.
Hey, that's me. Josh Benson, coming to you from Marion Cultural and Civic Center in Marion, Illinois.
And our good friends Kevin and Danielle can't be with us today, but Danielle and I had a great conversation with Christopher Kendrick-Castanho, who is currently at the Bushnell Center in Connecticut, and he is a marketer, but he also is involved with a lot of Broadway work. So we talked to him about the Broadway League and attending the Broadway League conference. So since we're talking about Broadway with Christopher, I just was curious, what's the best deal you ever got on a Broadway ticket?
Well, Brian, I missed out on a deal last year when I went and saw Gutenberg, the musical in New York. I was ready to buy my ticket, had it all priced out, whatever, hit buy. And then I checked my email for the confirmation. And I saw that while the ticket was in my cart, they had sent me a discount and I missed it in my inbox. So I could have gotten like 25% off my ticket had I just checked my email before I hit buy. So I was a little upset at myself for that. But it was still a fairly reasonably priced ticket and super fun show to see. I had such a great time.
That's too bad you missed out, but at least you got to see the show.
Story for another time. One of the best audience interaction moments I've ever seen on stage, period, happened during that production.
Well, we don't have our Danielle and Kevin with us, so we do have a little extra time if you want to tell it. I'm curious now.
So I was sitting in the balcony at Gutenberg the musical, and this woman who's in the second row. So Josh Gad and Andrew Rannells, who are in the show, could totally see her. She gets up less than 5 minutes before the end of Act One to go to the bathroom, and they see her get up, and she's climbing over people, and so they just stop, and they're sort of like, "Where are you going? We're almost done with Act One," and start talking to her directly from the stage. She's like, "I really have to go to the bathroom. Can you just all in good fun." It was amazing and so funny. We go to intermission, we come back, and then a cell phone rings right at the top of Act Two. It's the same woman.
Oh my God.
She starts taking her cell phone out of her bag. And of course, the guys stop and they start teasing her from the stage, and they have the whole audience in complete stitches. And they were like, Josh Gad is like, "You should be so glad I'm not Patti LuPone right now."
Oh, yeah, totally.
It was fantastic. I mean, it was probably a 6-minute interruption in the show where they were just joking with her, making jokes with the audience. But one of the funniest and most fabulous things I've ever seen happen in a theater, period.
For me, I think I do rush tickets all the time whenever I'm in New York. And I think I saw original cast of Come From Away for $37.
Ooh,
nice.
That's great.
It was fourth row, just slightly to the right of center. I think that's my most affordable.
I've already mentioned that I was a big rent head back in the day, and we used to literally sleep on the street sidewalk to try to get in the lottery, which was free if you won the lottery. So I got standing room once for free at Rent, but I guess the cheapest I ever paid was $20. We used to go through my community college in New York, Orange County Community College, where I was attending at the time. We had these trips where we just paid $20 and got to see all kinds of Broadway shows. Probably saw 7 different shows that way. So anyway, ticket prices do come up a little bit in this conversation with Christopher. So I just thought that would be a fun question. And we're going to now take a break and listen to mine and Danielle's conversation with Christopher, and we'll be on the other side to chat a little bit about what was talked about.
Hi, I'm Christopher Kendrick-Castanho. I'm the marketing manager for the Bushnell, which is a presenting theater in Hartford, Connecticut.
Hi, Christopher, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
So we're going to talk a bit about the Broadway League, which is a big part of today's discussion. But before we get into that, we just want to learn a little bit about you, your background, how you got into the arts. Was there a moment where the spark hit you, or was it kind of a progression over time?
I grew up as an actor. I was put into a youth theater program when I was, I think, 7 or 8 years old.
Can I stop you right there?
Sure.
Now, you say you were put into, so does that mean somebody made the decision for you?
Well, my mom signed me up for this youth theater program.
Okay.
And I had always wanted to perform. My mom signed me up for the town Parks and Rec theater program and caught the bug and had my first starring role as Hansel in This Old Gingerbread House.
Nice.
Alongside Gretel. And I went to a performing arts high school, studying musical theater. And then I went on to get my BFA in musical theater at Shenandoah Conservatory in Virginia. I graduated and I booked this job where I was Leaf Coney Bear in Spelling Bee and was also doing a touring children's production of The Jungle Book. I met my now husband, who was the director of that show. He also adapted it. We fell in love, and I applied for a teaching artist job at that theater. I then was offered a teaching artist and marketing job.
Oh, because those things always go together.
Right. So fun. But it was just like, I was 22, so I was like, sure, whatever, let's do it. And the opportunity to, be with Travis. So I did that gig. I went on to work in marketing at Barrington Stage Company. Worked at Midland Center for the Arts with your co-host, Katie.
Mm-hmm. We'll definitely talk more about that.
Oh, yeah. So my now husband, Travis, and I got married, and we moved to Michigan after only being in Massachusetts at Barrington for a short period of time for his job. And so I was like, well, if we're moving to Michigan, I want to get married in Connecticut because that's where all my family is. And we chose the theater that we were talking about, that spark for the arts. I went when I was really young. My grandmother took me to see a production of The Sound of Music at the Bushnell. And it's always been such a special place for me. And so Travis and I actually got married at that theater.
Oh, wow.
And so it was really special. And, 9 months later, I was at a conference and I met my now boss. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just got married there. And she's like, I recognize your photo. And so it was kind of kismet that a job opened up at the Bushnell. I interviewed, I got it. And now I work at the Performing Arts Center. That is the place where I was inspired to pursue this whole thing. So it's like a super full circle moment for me.
That's amazing. I love full circle moments. And I'm going to push you to go back even further because I want to know what it was that you were doing at home that your mom saw to bring you to the theater. Like, what was the very beginning? Like, you skipped something, and I want to get to that.
You're digging deep, Brian. I think I was obsessed with The Wizard of Oz, and so I would watch that movie and would act it out.
Mary Poppins was me.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's like all of those musicals that we saw growing up that on the movie musicals that inspired us to just act it all out in our living room. It was so special. So I think that was the big thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so now I work in marketing for presenting theater, which I had always worked in producing theater. And so it's a wild thing that I get to work on these big Broadway shows and work on advertising plans and things like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So tell us more about your current role at the Bushnell and the types of marketing programs that you're working on.
Yeah, so I am a marketing manager there. And so I work on marketing and advertising plans for the shows that come through, in addition to, our educational programs, supporting development. I'm account manager of several different Broadway shows that we have in our season, in addition to the Bushnell has a management agreement with another performing arts center in Connecticut called the Warner Theater. And so I kind of manage all of the marketing for that organization, which is a smaller presenting theater, in addition to some produced community theater and some fun, rental marketing support, things like that. So strategic thinking, booking advertising, helping, create content for some of the produced work at the Warner. So it's lots of fun.
That's new. I haven't heard of a model like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. During COVID, the theater was basically struggling. They were needing a little bit more support, managerial support. And then the executive director, after he kind of got the company through, he was like, I have to step down, but I want to try and put the organization in good hands. And, we just need a little bit more support in all the different areas. And so the Bushnell kind of helps, and several Bushnell staff members support all the different departments at the Warner.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Christopher, are the marketing plans or advertising plans pretty much like a template and then you fill in some things here and there to alter it by show? Or can you just explain how that works for people that don't know?
Yeah, so we're always given a budget if we're lucky, I guess. But for any presents work, we're given a budget. And so it's my job to kind of think strategically on who's that audience, how do we reach that audience, and what promotion and advertising should I buy to get the message out there, to drive ticket sales and awareness. So there are certain things that I almost always do, which is like social media paid campaigns and things like that. But everything is very by show, which I think is important, because I think every audience is different. And so we don't want to always do everything by rote, because we're not always going to be reaching the correct ticket buyers.
I want to dig a little bit deeper on social media there, because it changes constantly. I see it just as a user, but also seeing the back end of, our work. What strategy are you taking on social media right now? And what kind of, I guess, maybe success or challenges are you seeing in that?
It's so funny because I can spend so much time and effort on like creating these incredible videos or crafting this like high quality work. But the thing that social media really blows up with is like gritty, authentic, silly, short form, like unpolished stuff. So I always kind of laugh because in these paid social media campaigns, I'll be building all this different content and seeing what performs the best. And, the thing that I've spent probably the least amount of time on, of course, is the thing that does the highest and has the highest return. And so it's like, okay, so it's like we're strategically thinking about that. People want this behind the scenes. They want to feel like they're in the trenches with us. They want to feel like they're seeing the thing that's not on stage. Of course, we have to promote the content that is on stage because that is our product. But, it doesn't have to be the like Barbara Walters interview quality that I was like aiming for before. It's like giving the like, shake my hand in character, or, the like costume changes of the show, like all that fun stuff people love. So.
And how often are you looking at that data and sort of like changing sort of where you're putting money towards, or, like what does that look like for you?
Gosh, I often am checking these campaigns on a daily or every couple of days to see kind of what's going on. Things take a little bit to like reach their altitude, if you will, but I'm often checking these things definitely at least once a week. And seeing which tactics we need to shift towards, or what's, costing a little bit more money. And there's also the conversation of, sometimes if you want to reach a newer audience, it's going to cost a little bit more money because they're the less easy person to just like draw in there. So there's also, especially when talking about diverse audiences or newer audiences, it's going to cost a little bit more, but that's like a mission-based kind of strategy that sometimes we have to be okay with it costing a little bit more, because the return on that can be a long game thing.
That's a great point. And I was wondering if, staying on social media, when you start a campaign and you're watching it, what's nice about social media campaigns, you can watch the money as it's spent and see the activity and see if it's reaching people or not. And do you ever just say, okay, this one's not working, and just abandon it and start a new approach? Or do you just kind of let them go and see if they take off or not?
I think there's definitely a line of like time where I'm like, okay, this is not doing it. I need to figure out what else to do. Otherwise we're, just spending money and it's not returning. Yeah. So I think it depends on what, the show is, what the content is, if I need to do a creative refresh, if I need to go back to the show and say, hey, is there something else that we can do? Or, hey, this isn't performing as well. Often with these like presents shows as well, it's great because they're experiencing things in other markets that then I can be like, hey, what was the highest return on ad spend for this digital campaign? So I can be able to have a barometer, because, different shows have different audiences and different popularity. So.
And how much does the producer of the touring show, especially when we're talking about the Broadway tours, do they inject themselves or have to approve ads or anything like that? I know when we don't have Broadway shows at our theaters, but we have, big name artists, and a lot of times we have to contractually show them the ad or whatever it might be before we run with it.
Yeah. So the Broadway tours always have an ad representative who is in charge of advertising and marketing for the whole country. So I have to get everything that's paid approved through them. And there are also certain shows like the Book of Mormon where I have to have everything approved, even organic social has to be approved. Wow. Which is like sometimes a little tricky because I can't do something in the spur of the moment. I have to get it approved and I have to give 48 hours for approval. And I understand that their brands, they're very, specific about how it should be used and how we can interpret it. I've never interacted with a producer in my role, other than like at a conference or, out in the wild just by happenstance. But I'm always interacting with the tour and having approval, which in actuality is also great because there's also, if I make a goof, it's been approved and then it's not just my goof, So but it's great to have that other set of eyes in addition to my colleagues.
So kind of zooming out a little bit from social media, I just wanted to talk with you a little bit about like marketing overall. And like, what do you think right now are the opportunities that you're finding? You know, what are the kind of new things that you're looking at coming into maybe this next season? I'm not sure how your calendar works, you know, or within any of your like marketing communities. Like what's the next thing that you are kind of interested in?
That's a really great question. Arts and culture marketing is what I've always done. And it's interesting because it's been tricky with our culture shifting in the pandemic of, you know, I've heard people say that like our biggest competition is the couch because there's just so much content that is available on social and on streaming that we can just have immediately. Whereas I think we all know that live performance and live arts and culture is unlike anything to be able to experience it with people in that room. I think the big thing is tapping into those content creators and those influencers. We partner with an organization called Ryan Marketing, which is in West Hartford, Connecticut. And they kind of spearhead all of our grassroots and influencer marketing. So they're super connected in the community, and we give them a budget for hours and work and content, and then they are able to go out into the community. So for example, some fun community partnerships with like the Wooden Tap. There was like a green drink for Wicked at the bar there. We're prepping for Back to the Future right now. The tour is coming, and we have the Connecticut Science Center is doing this thing about weather, and we were able to have like a partnership with Doc Brown and the weather and fun stuff like that. So they're finding us those partnerships. But what's really is like is pushing the needle, I think, is our influencer connection. So they're doing giveaways, they're doing unboxings of merch that we send them. They're kind of reaching that organic community on social that it's hard to be like, we're so great, you should come to our theater, versus they're endorsing, you know, in some way like our product. So that's been really exciting, because I think to also have a partner who knows so much about that versus us, which we know so much about theater and so much about why it's so special, they can connect us with those people who can also help share that message, which is really exciting.
We talked about Broadway and we mentioned the Broadway League at the beginning. Can you tell people who aren't familiar with the Broadway League, just let's start there, maybe say what it is?
The Broadway League is an organization that is kind of like the umbrella company that kind of connects all of the Broadway people together. They are kind of just like in the background of so many things, whether it's like the Tony Awards or these big conferences that we go to. I have like a Broadway League thing right here in front of me. And so I attended the Spring Road Conference through the Broadway League this past month, and which brought over 900 attendees together from all over the country. And we are all the presenting theaters or producers of Broadway shows that are hoping to get onto the road, or booking agents and people who are kind of all coming together to make Broadway happen across America. So that was a really exciting opportunity to get to just like see everybody that we're like emailing, you know, or on these Teams meetings, and to talk about this season's Broadway.
We talk about how important relationships are in this industry in all aspects of our work. So when you mentioned getting to meet people in person and developing those relationships that way, I'm sure it's a special thing. As someone doing marketing, who are the people that you're looking to connect with the most? Is it fellow marketers? Is it everybody? Like, can you explain what your approach is in that way?
I mean, I just love making friends. And I think being able to have relationships and connections with people in all the different aspects of the biz is super useful, because it also gives me perspective. If I'm waiting for these production photos to come out, like, why haven't I got the assets? Why, you know, I'm able to talk to my, you know, friends who are working on the production team of like, hey, we're trying to get this show up. We're teching the show. And, you know, so it like just gives perspective of like, okay, cool. You know, we're all doing our best here. We're going to make it happen. And but I do love connecting with marketers. The Broadway League also has a marketing forum, like a mini conference, which is where I met my now boss, Alex Page Hatley. That's fun because we're getting to talk about, these are the struggles I'm having, or these are the successes that I've had, and just makes you feel like, cool, I'm not crazy. Other people are also doing these things all day. And
can you lift the curtain and tell us what the trends are? What are the problems that people are generally having together, and what are the new ways that people are looking at it?
I think generally we're seeing a later ticket buyer which all of us marketers are like metaphorically chain smoking as we get closer and closer to the performance. We're like, oh God, come on. And we're seeing, those trends in general. I think we're all kind of struggling with this like third party ticket seller market of, we're having shows that haven't even gone on sale yet that we just announced next season that are selling tickets on these websites. And we're having to be like, Hamilton is not on sale yet, y'all. Please don't do that. We had Nikki Glazer come, which was so cool. And her tickets were going for like $600 on these resale websites, and people are pissed, and we're like, what? That's not us. And then they're coming to the theater and they don't have that seat. That's not even like, it's like so hard. So it's like, we're talking to all of these different organizations that are dealing with similar issues on, how are we combating this despite legislation that we're trying to push for of, transparency of if you're the official ticket seller and things like that. So yeah, it's just like great to be able to be like, oh, cool. Like, what are you doing? Like, how is that going for you? What do you wish you knew if you were in my spot? So super helpful.
And so this year at that Spring Road conference, were there any conversations that you felt like kind of kept coming up in the professional development sessions or just in your networking? Like, what are people talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. We had awesome professional development sessions. We had a lot of cool creative conversations with actors and creatives from Death Becomes Her, Buena Vista Social Club, Operation Mincemeat, Boop, Maybe Happy Ending. So that was just so cool. I'm just like such a fan of, I'm Just in Time. So it's like Jonathan Groff and Megan Hilty and Audra and all these people are coming, to talk about their shows. And it's like, I'm in the same room. What? And also there was a lot of conversation about rising expenses in touring. And it's a little daunting. We looked at 3 different shows of similar size from 2012, 2019, and 2024. And, there are certain things like lodging and trucking increased almost 43% from 2012 to 2024.
Wow.
Which is like, so how are we still bringing these like big Broadway shows on the road and not increasing these ticket prices, because at some point there's going to be a cap. We're going to tap out on the audience and also for accessibility. And, so that was a big conversation of, how do we still bring Broadway and not bring it with 11 trucks and bring it with 7 trucks or, and trying to, the opportunity for creatives to be creative, or have that be an opportunity for when they have to reimagine their Broadway show on the road, keeping the creative integrity, but not having there be as much. And I struggle with that because I'm like, well, people are coming to see this show. So there has to be some kind of balance there. I remember when I was young and I saw Catch Me If You Can at the Bushnell, and that set and that show actually had been tweaked and reimagined before it went out on tour from Broadway. And that was cool because it was still this show, but it was a little bit different and a little bit scaled down. So yeah, but we also saw that marketing expenses increased 54% from 2012 to 2024. So for me, I'm like, yes, more money. Give me all the money. I want to sell this out. It's always fun because, I love to have a big budget to make a big splash. And it's easier than having to be like, okay, how do I make this little shoestring stretch? But yeah, so it was a really interesting conversation that wasn't as doom and gloom as you might think in that way. But it was kind of like the realistic perspective, both for all of the producers in the room and presenters in the room to kind of, we have to work together to be able to bring the same level of high quality theater to, our audiences around the country. Also, I'm a nerd and I love data. So I thought it was interesting that capitalization for a tour is about 1/3 the cost of what it takes to capitalize a show for Broadway. So it is really funny that I was like, oh, interesting. I guess because all the pieces have to,
Right. But you have to have the Broadway show first for it to work on the road. So
right. And I was like curious that, certain shows that don't recoup on Broadway that close then go on tour, and like, interesting, they closed, but in order to recoup an investment, often it takes.
Well, now they've been a Broadway show, so they've got that to sell.
Yeah. And so it's like trying to recoup that investment. They often do it on the road versus on Broadway.
It makes sense from a financial perspective. I want to go back to what you were saying. It sounds like some of the focus has been on reducing some of the production elements or size and scope. Were there other avenues that people were bringing up as possible ways to make it more affordable and accessible?
I think they were also discussing the routing. And so, making it a little bit easier to get it around the country and not have the jumps be so far. Because also, obviously, travel takes time, and time is money that we could be making with an audience seeing the show if we're not able to run the show for a week or whatever, if we have to, move it in.
There's no question a tightly routed tour is very important.
Yeah.
For financial reasons.
It is interesting with the routing, and from what I've heard about Harry Potter, the tour, it's like because of how much it takes to move the show on tour, they're like, we're doing months. We're doing a month-long sit. And, for our venue at the Bushnell, we're like, the most we'll do is probably like about 3 weeks, and it has to be Wicked or Lion King or, these big ones. So it's tough because certain presenters are like, we can't do that. Our market can't sustain that.
That's an important point, because actually a lot of the smaller cities, they're required to, especially first run shows, they're required to have a minimum of 2 weeks typically. And there's smaller communities out there that could help with that tightly routed tour we were talking about, but they can't even do more than maybe a weekend to support that. They just don't have the audiences. And I wonder if the Broadway producers would be open to thinking about that for first runs, or you're saying that they're looking at sitting someplace even longer is what their preference is.
Yeah, it's interesting and how it all breaks down. And we were talking also with these producers, because some of the producers are like, so we're still trying to figure out if a show is going on tour, we're trying to figure out where it would go. And so, we can't even give full expenses because we don't exactly know what the routing will be. We're trying to figure that out. So there's that like ongoing juggling of, these are our expected expenses.
Well, my access ears are popping up because I'm just thinking, like, if they're going to be if they're going to only be going places where they can be there for 4 weeks or more, those are the larger cities. So they're going to be really hurting the rural presenters, and the rural audiences are just going to be missing out more and having less access. So hopefully that's not the only solution.
But let me tell you, if there was a tour and it was sitting in Philadelphia and there were some understudies that hadn't gone on in a little while, and we could do a cabaret performance with some of the songs from that show and like a mix of other stuff, like I would book that in a second, like as a smaller house, a smaller presenter that's not in the Philly market, right? But is like very drivable in a day. Like it's good to know that there may be some more like creative ideas about routing and like what that tour could look like on the road, or if Harry Potter comes and sits down like right next to us, right? That's like 3 weeks. If my perspective is like a much smaller presenter, like I hear this conversation a little bit differently.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. And I always think it's fascinating with the opportunities that these performers could also be doing more educational opportunities and master classes and more community engagement. And I know that these shows are hard and their bodies are taking a toll because they're traveling, a lot. But I'm always like, wait, what if and shows are very protective of their talent, and I honor that because that's also their product of what they're delivering. But I'm always like, what, that'd be so cool if they could, do that cabaret, or that we could like, partner and engage with, smaller organizations to just kind of like help fill, since we're going to be having these groups of people come through,
So I took a little peek at what you all did at the Broadway conference, because I didn't have FOMO or anything. But one of the sessions that caught my eye was about debunking what we think we know about our audiences. And I'm curious, what don't we know?
Well, it's funny. I think a lot of debunking was affirming in some ways. There was some data that it's like 49% of people, and this was a survey of Broadway attendees. So again, this is very specific to Broadway and not, the road. And it's similar to like what we're finding too. 49% of single ticket buyers see 1 to 2 shows per year. And so it's like, okay, so that's interesting. We were seeing also that 63% of patrons say that price point is the most important deciding factor in purchasing tickets. And I was like, okay, this, 73% of patrons say ticket prices prevent them from coming. So, we're seeing a lot of data. It is interesting when we were looking at the data before that, ticket prices have not increased at the same level of inflation that expenses have. So like, thank God. And that's like, okay, this is like a continual challenge. Another piece of data that I thought was really interesting was that New York City reached 97% of its 2019 domestic visitation level in 2024. So we're almost at 100% of visitation level that we were before the pandemic.
Wow.
Which I was like, oh, that's great news. You know, it's like, you know, pretty wild. Okay, well, do you want to play a guessing game with me? What do you think were the top 4 international, you know, markets or travelers that visited New York City?
Sir, we are the hosts here.
I mean,
I'm kidding.
We love games. We love
is
games.
Is it China?
I was gonna guess China.
All right, there's 3 others, but if that's one,
but that is one. Is that? Are you not telling us until?
I'm not telling you until.
Okay.
Oh, so we agree. And Danielle, are we going against each other, or are we a team?
I love teamwork. Yeah,
we're a team.
Okay, so China, I agree with that. I feel like Germany.
I was gonna say the UK, but then I was thinking it was maybe somewhere else in Europe. I feel like there are good flights though from the UK to New York.
Yeah, I'll go with UK too.
But I was also curious about maybe Australia. But maybe these are just the places
all right.
I want to go.
Should we lock it in?
Incredible. Okay, so I'll tell you the top 4 from this survey data. The top international traveling, you know, the country to travel to New York City is the UK.
Okay.
Then Canada.
Oh, right.
Then
Canada,
France.
Then
Italy.
Okay.
Wow.
So China used to be up there in the top 4, but since the pandemic, it's been knocked down. So it's actually Brazil is next, then China. So it's pretty wild. Yeah.
No Australia or Germany. Oh, well.
I know. But so there's some really interesting, more about audiences in New York, but I was like really surprised and happy to hear, about the domestic visitation level. And then also interested that I thought that China was like the #1 international traveler to New York, but isn't even in the top 4 anymore.
Interesting.
We got a lot of business talk about the Broadway League, but let's talk about the fun part. All the shows that you get to see in such a short amount of time. What did you see? What was awesome? What did you love?
Oh my gosh. I saw 7 shows in 5 days, which was amazing. I love data. So I love recapping everything in data. So, I recapped how many minutes of Broadway I saw. 'Cause I think I saw almost 16 hours of Broadway.
Wow.
I can see why you and Katie are friends now. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, Katie's the best. I love her. And so we nerd out over stuff like that. But I really loved The Outsiders, which I knew I would love. But what I was most surprised about loving was maybe Happy Ending, which is Darren Criss stars in this show. And it's so good. I just loved it so much. The music, the story, just about being about connection and love. And it just is so special. So I've been thinking about that one a lot. I loved Death Becomes Her. It's so camp. It's so fun. It knows exactly what it is, and it just brings so much joy. The book is so funny. I laughed the entire 2.5 hours or however long it is. Yeah, and something that really surprised me was I saw the Stranger Things play. And, my husband and I were just like, oh, we'll just go. It's a Sunday evening show. Let's fit another one in. And it was so cool. I've not seen Harry Potter, but I imagine the illusions are similar to the... it's so impressive. The things that they do, I'm like, how did they do that? And being a theater person, you're always trying to figure out, is that a double? Is that this? Is that a screen? What is it? But it was just a true gift to be surrender to not knowing. It just is so impressive.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I went in March to see Oh Mary, and then Amtrak decided to leave me in New York. And
oh, no.
I was like, you could actually just go back tomorrow if you want. And so on my walk to see Oh Mary, I was in the process of also buying a ticket to maybe Happy Ending.
Oh, yes.
So because it ended at 6 or 6:30. It was, it was short play. And then I just hopped over a block and yeah, so that was, I wish I could do that more often. But yeah, everyone I've heard that's seen maybe Happy Ending has just died.
Yeah,
and I agree. It was so good. I didn't see Darren Criss in it. It was an understudy, and he was incredible. I mean, it truly doesn't matter.
That's so cool. I remembered that our keynote speaker for the conference, it's a secret celebrity keynote speaker. And so we were like, who's it going to be? Is it going to be George Clooney? Like, who's it going to be? They announced, they were like, and your keynote speaker is Cola Scola. And Cola Scola walks out. We were like, yeah. And they were like, yes, I know, I'm not George Clooney. And it was just like the funniest thing, because we were all just like, who is it? And they gave this like beautiful, heartfelt speech about growing up in, Washington State, and, finding theater, and what, regional and, presented theater brought them, and, has given them the spark to pursue the career. So special.
We have a time machine. I don't know if Katie told you, Christopher, but we actually just got it back. And so we're starting to use it again. But I don't know where to bring you back to. Danielle, you have any thoughts?
I was thinking we should go back in time to when you were a teaching artist / baby marketer.
Yeah,
that point, right after being kind of an actor on tour. And we didn't talk about if you're still an actor or not, but, kind of that feels like it was a point where like priorities maybe kind of shifted. And so, Brian, what's your question? What's your question about that time period?
Just if we could go back to that moment in our time machine, what would you tell yourself, or what either advice that you think you needed at that time, or if you don't want to do that because you don't want to change the trajectory of your life, which many people say, at least what kind of encouragement would you have needed at that time?
It's so interesting. I'm not really an actor anymore. That's not, unless there's something that I would really want to do. I'm much more fulfilled promoting these shows and, communicating it out to the world about why people should come. But I think if I were to go back in time and talk to myself at that moment, I guess I would just say, like, hold tight. Life is going to work out exactly how it's meant to. You're going to find the opportunities and the people that are going to teach you all that you need to know and more. And that will, I've been so lucky to be surrounded by so many people I can lean on, and the things that I don't know how to do, I know how to do. I just have to remember, and I just have to find that and find the people to help teach me the pieces that I don't know.
That's a great answer. We can't leave without asking you, because our good Pod Squad host friend, Katie, and you somehow connected in Midland, Michigan together. And in my head, because we don't know you, for the listeners, Danielle and I are just meeting you for the first time. And I'm picturing you and Katie in Midland, like both looking at each other in a restaurant, and you see you're both using checkbooks, and then you talk about stats and data, and you get all excited about this stuff. No, but tell me the real story. Like, how did you guys meet, and how did you become friends?
So my husband got a job at Midland Center for the Arts, which moved us there, and Katie was working there. So when Travis went to interview, we went to Midland, and we met all the people. So I'm pretty sure I met Katie there at that time. Katie will know exactly exactly know the moment we met. I'm sorry, Katie. It just feels like I just have known Katie for so long, because we are so we're so on the same page. We have the same expectation for creativity and excellence, and how art can change the world. Yes, it was then, because Katie gave us like a little tour of the space and showed us some things and told us about projects she had done. So it was that weekend. Sorry, Katie. I remember. And so it's been fun. And I loved working with her, because she was so smart, so open to ideas and like dreaming big. And then also, what's the action plan? Katie and I are both action people. And so, what are going to be the next steps that we take to like make this happen? Which I just love people like that.
Well, I think we can all agree that Katie is a ray of sunshine.
She is. She has like such great energy, has such great experience, has such great insight. Just a big fan.
And she led us to you to have this really incredible conversation about marketing, because I've got some things now that I need to go Google and learn some more about.
Well, happy to have the conversation again, or talk more, offline. So.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much. This was such a great chat today. And
thanks.
We'll see. I'm sure we'll see you sometime soon.
Absolutely.
It was great meeting you.
Great to meet you too.
Brian and Danielle, thank you so much for having this really lovely conversation with my dear friend, Christopher. Obviously, we work together at Midland Center for the Arts, and I had the pleasure of working with both Christopher and his husband, Travis, who is our director of produced theater. So worked with our amazing local community theater programs, our youth theater education programs, and they are two of my dearest friends. So I'm so glad that you got to meet Christopher and have this conversation. And also, Christopher didn't mention, but he is also a playwright himself and an amazing theater director as well. So he directed several shows while he was with us here in Michigan. So he has some additional hidden talents that he didn't share during our conversation.
As many of you know, I'm a huge Broadway fan, and I've always been so intrigued by the Broadway League spring event and all of the insights and everything that come along with that. And so it was really good to hear about that. And then also to hear about, like, I enjoyed the statistics that he provided to give us some real insight into how the numbers have changed, both from a tourism standpoint, from a cost standpoint. I found all of that really intriguing in this interview.
Yeah, I wish I had more time to like dig into the numbers, because he said that ticket prices haven't risen at the same rate as inflation, and that feels wrong to me. But I have to trust his numbers because, again, I didn't have time to look them up. But I just know anecdotally, the expensive tickets when I first started going to Broadway shows and buying tickets myself, of course, it was a long time ago, but the highest tickets were like $100. It was like, oh my God, the $100 seats, and now that's the cheap seats is $100. So to me, just anecdotally, it feels like way more expensive.
Yeah. Now, granted, that's a difference of 35 years versus the difference of 12 years.
Thanks for calling out the number, Josh. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I will say, though, it feels like, at least in our Broadway market, we have not been able to raise the price of tickets as much as we would have wanted to at Midland Center for the Arts. I think because we feel that the market won't bear it or wouldn't bear it. So I can believe, particularly in smaller communities, that there is that gap between cost of inflation for touring costs and production costs and ticket prices. So I can believe that there is a gap, and we're probably seeing that more on the road versus like in New York City.
But I bring that up because access is important to all of us, and Broadway and access has always been a difficult thing to match up because it's always been the people that can afford the expensive tickets. And as I mentioned at the start of this episode, we had programs when I was growing up in the New York State area where we would go for $20 and see all kinds of Broadway shows. And now, my kids get to do it through the school, and it's like $100 for them. So that leaves some families out that don't have it. And just wondering if it's getting harder or if it's about the same and it's just inflation, the numbers match up. I don't know, but I don't know what we can do about that. But I think it feels, again, I can only go with what I'm feeling, is it feels like the gap is growing and making it harder for access. And with Broadway show expenses, which, Christopher talked about, them being, they're having their expenses go up as well, which is understandable because all of our expenses are going up. And so it's like, if they don't raise the ticket prices, what are they supposed to do? So I understand from both sides. It's just from having my access hat on, I just, wonder what can we do to help that so it doesn't become worse.
Well, additionally, I think that a lot of it's becoming worse because of something that he mentioned, which is the third-party ticketing.
Oh, God,
gives us such a false illusion of incredibly high ticket prices that are not a reality. I mean, they're a reality because some people are still paying them. And it's a problem for not just for Broadway ticketing, but for concert ticketing and event ticketing all over the country. And we had somebody for a local theater production where the tickets were $15 a ticket. We had somebody buy third-party tickets online for $120 a piece.
Oh my gosh.
Holy cow.
And they're coming in, and like he said, they didn't even get the tickets that they were promised.
Yeah.
Because it's third party.
It's heartbreaking. I know.
It's heartbreaking. And so often we end up comping seats to people if we've got the seats available for shows. Whenever they have bought third-party tickets, we cannot find any evidence of tickets for them in our system. They've even been sold for for seats that don't exist in our building.
Right.
They'll have an email and it'll say, this right row G, seat 12, and we only have 7 seats in that row. We do our best to accommodate, facilitate, put them into whatever the best available open seating that we have, but we feel terrible for people,
right?
Because one, they've paid more than anybody else in the building for those seats. And they're seats that don't exist.
That makes them have a negative experience all the way around, right? So even if they understand that it's not your fault, it has nothing to do with your venue, it is a poor patron experience sort of from beginning to end. And there's that sort of feeling of shame too, of being duped, of being taken advantage of, that makes it harder for someone to then come back into your building or have a positive experience after that. Similarly, Josh, last season, I was sitting with my friend Amy, and we were talking about the season. She wanted to see Vienna Boys Choir. And so she literally pulled it up on her phone and was going to buy tickets while we were sitting there chatting. And she goes, "Oh, which website should I use?" I go, "What do you mean, which website should you use?" So I look at her phone and the very first link was a third
every time
party seller. I was like, no, go to Midland Center for the Arts every single time. Like, you have to check the web address. So it is rampant, obviously. So there is federal legislation that has been passed in this vein, and state of Michigan, alongside a lot of other states, are working on similar legislation. But my question is about actual enforcement, right? And so you can pass like this, the legislation that's working its way through the Michigan State House right now has a enforcement penalties. So there'll be criminal penalties, but also a civil penalty of $5,000 if you're found guilty of this. First of all, I don't think that's enough teeth to discourage somebody from doing this. Like, $5,000 civil fine, you're making, $1 million on these, fraudulent tickets a year. Like, $5,000 is nothing. But also, like, how do you actually catch cyber criminals in this space? It seems nearly impossible. And so how do you actually end up enforcing this law? How do you catch people in the act? How do you shut it down? I don't even know how that works.
Well, and that's the enforceability of it is one problem, but I mean, some of the stuff that is passed isn't eliminating third-party ticketing. Most of it that's passed is not eliminating third-party ticketing. It is, so much of it is the ticket fee transparency, where everything has to be represented as an all-in ticket, which that's an easy fix from somebody with a ticketing system. But nonetheless, like, the enforceability of it, you can never get a person on the phone. You can never, it is very hard to prove that they are, one, with the legislation that has passed, it is only whenever they're selling tickets that are not actually available that it's a problem, that it's illegal. Mm-hmm. If they are reselling tickets that are available, that are real tickets, it's still not illegal. And I'm not an expert on anything that's passed or any of the legislation, but the things that have been passed so far don't actually fix the issues.
I do think it's going to be a long-term issue, right? That we're going to have to continue dealing with, because we know the wheels of justice turn slowly, and legislation at both state and federal level can be an incredibly painful process. So it's still an area of advocacy for the field, and an area that we have to stay on top of. There was initially legislation passed in 2020 here in Michigan. There's a new round with this kind of upped penalties working its way through the state now, but it's not going to be enough. And like you said, Josh, none of it really fixes the issue. So the advocacy piece of that is still going to have to be strong on our part moving forward.
You hit the nail on the head before, Katie, when you said go to the site directly of the venue, and that'll have the link that you need for ticketing. So even if it takes you, like our venue takes you outside, it brings you to Ticketmaster, but at least you're starting from us, and you're getting the right link. Whereas if you're just going on Google and searching, these third-party companies that are making millions of dollars fraudulently are spending all kinds of money to get on the top of those lists, so they're seen first. So that's not a reliable source to just Google it.
Digital literacy en masse is really important in this day and age, and whatever we can do as arts administrators, just talk to our friends, family members, things like that, just to let them know what's going on and help them be cautious. That's a part of the solution as well.
I also want to talk about what Christopher said about Broadway shows looking at trying to stay put longer, which again, I understand from a financial standpoint why a producer would benefit from that. But then I also think about how that affects rural opportunities. And, right now a lot of us venues are not able to have Broadway shows, especially on first runs, because of the minimum sit-down period. And now if they're going to be extending that, that's, I think, going to take out even more theaters that were part of the tours for longer periods of time. Whereas I think if they'd be open to doing things sort of along the lines what Danielle is talking about, kind of like our friend David Wannen does, where, okay, maybe they're on a tour of Pirates of Penzance, New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players, if they don't know who I'm talking about. And maybe in between, there's a venue that is a great route for them, but can't afford to do the show or doesn't have the production capabilities, but they have that concert version of Gilbert and Sullivan or something, which is a lot more affordable for everybody. And it helps the company have another stop and pay their bills. I mean, there might be opportunities there that to look at along those lines. And then also, my main point is the fact that a lot of rural presenters already can't present these types of shows, and now even fewer will be able to. And so I think it's going to, again, go back to access issues.
Yes, there's access issues, but at the same time, with the Broadway tours, there's so much that is control of product that putting out any kind of altered product based on that IP is never going to happen.
Well, never say never, Josh.
But I'm saying, like, especially whenever it's first run tour, you're never going to have an in-concert version of a first run tour of anything. Like, they are protecting the IP by only offering it a certain way.
I thought Danielle's idea, though, about, and, Christopher mentioning community engagement and masterclass and things like that, it does seem to me that there are other opportunities, though, for that tour to make revenue when they are sitting down. So doing runouts, like Danielle suggested, doing master classes and things like that. I remember particularly we wanted to do some master classes with the King and I when it was on tour and coming through Midland, and they were like, yeah, let's do it. And then it was like pulling teeth to get the company to commit to doing anything. And it was like, we're willing to pay an extra fee. This is great community engagement for us. Great. We can do tons more social media and marketing around the show and all of these other things. So again, and I honor the need for the artist to rest and the tour to control costs and things like that. But like, again, ecosystem, we talk about that all the time. Like, finding those other opportunities could be mutually beneficial to both the touring company and the producers, as well as the host venues and the community writ large. Flexibility and creativity is going to be the name of the game moving forward, right? So I think anything should be on the table at this point in time.
While I agree that idealistically, from an artistic standpoint, but Broadway as a whole is much more a corporate entity and is much more about the IP than it is about the flexibility and the artistic part of it. At that point, it is a finished product, and that's what's going to get presented.
Yeah, and they're looking at the dollars and cents. It's kind of like we talk about the commercial side of our business, and it's just on the art side of the business. We're just trying to look at it holistically and say that there are communities losing out on this opportunity. And again, the producers don't care about that. They don't care about access. They don't care. I can't say they all, but generally speaking, they care about the bottom line and the dollar. And again, that goes to the control you're talking about, Josh. But from a shared value of creativity and sharing arts and exposing new audiences and growing audiences, to which of course also affects the bottom line. You're going out into rural areas to people that maybe never saw a Broadway show before, have a chance to see one in their community, and now all of a sudden they might discover they're hooked and start spending their money to go to New York to see another Broadway show. I mean, these are audiences that we're developing, just like when we talk about youth audiences. You develop them at a young age to appreciate and enjoy live theater experiences, and hopefully that'll lead them to a lifelong love and appreciation and a built-in audience, essentially, which comes down to dollars and cents. And if we're not developing them, thinking about these access questions now, it's just I just see the trajectory of what's happening in the dance world, many years from now, maybe, where you're just focusing on the big cities. That's where it's happening well. And every once in a while, a rural presenter will get some money to bring them out, and they lose tons of money on it. And it just becomes less and less an opportunity for those communities.
So one of the parts of the marketing conversation that you and Danielle had, Brian, with Christopher, I was like, tell me more, was the influencer marketing. Because I specifically remember having that conversation with Christopher when we worked together at Midland Center about how do we find influencers in our community and utilize them to help push out our messaging. I love it here, but like, we don't have social media influencers here that are, native to our Midland community necessarily. So we had this idea, and I was so excited to hear that a company is actually doing that in the art space and has found a way to connect a venue with social media influencers and doing the unboxing videos and the, promotions, those sorts of things. I thought that was so cool. And I was like, tell me more. I want to know more. How did you find these people? What do you pay them to do it? Like, what do those contracts look like? Because it really, truly is. We're still seeing it in the TikTok space and Instagram space in particular. It has cachet. Those people get listened to, right? When they are talking about something happening in the community. Capacity Interactive cited in one of their podcasts last year in 2024 about how TikTok is now the #1 way that people find new travel destinations and things to do when they travel. So if we're not using influencers on TikTok to help promote our venues, we're missing out on a whole part of the tourism industry that didn't exist 3 years ago.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Adapting and jumping into to exactly what is happening right now and what the trend is, it gets you in front of new audiences. So I really applaud the ideas of jumping in and using influencers for those things to further spread your brand as a venue. Once again, it is all about managing yourself as a brand, and doing that using influencers is a really great way to access new audiences at this point.
Yeah, and I always remind my staff too that influencers aren't just the people with gazillions of views and subscribers online, that we have mom groups in the community. We have other types of influencers that have connections to people that are target audiences for us. And so, those are the types of people we're looking at because they're local, they're here in the community. They're going to be a lot easier to engage with. So that's all the time we have this week on There's No Business Like. I want to thank Christopher for joining us for this conversation. I had a great time meeting him, and thank you, Katie, for setting up that connection. And you guys are so much alike. It's so crazy. Anyway, if you're into Broadway like we are, we're all Broadway nerds. Next week, we're going to continue this topic talking about the Tonys. So we'll catch you next week.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to There's No Business Like. Our producers and hosts are Brian Zelmer, Josh Benson, Kevin Maynard, Katie Miller, and me, Danielle Van Hook. Views expressed in this podcast are ours alone and are not reflective of the organizations we are a part of. Keep up with us at nobusinesslike.com. There you'll find links to all of our episodes and socials. If you like this podcast, give us a like, a follow, a review, or our favorite, a 5-star rating. Oh, wait, what was that site? I got it, don't worry. It is nobusinesslike.com. Do I sound out bus-I-ness every time I type it? Yep, sure do. Stay in touch, my friends.
Your hair's curlier. It's fluffier than usual.
Is it?
Yeah. Standing a little taller.
That's what every guy wants to hear. You look fluffy today. Thanks.
This is hair. I'm getting mine cut this afternoon. I'm very excited.
I mean, we've got Brian being fluffy. Fluffy Brian's now my favorite Brian.
It's fluffy hair, Brian, not fluff. Not. He's not fluffy himself. His hair's fluffy.
Nope, he's all fluffy. Ow! Just poked myself in the eye.
With one of your half fingers?
I'm gonna have to cut that one off so that doesn't happen again.
How do you do that?
I don't know how that happened.
What were you doing that you poked yourself in the eye?
I don't know. You guys saw it. Like I just moved my hand and just bam.